Hi everyone. I'm going to make a prompt start at 10 o'clock, although we might have other people joining in as we go. So welcome to the Northern Accelerator Executives into Business webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Jordan Byers and I'm the Programme Manager for Northern Accelerator. I'm really pleased to be hosting this session on our Executives into Business programme today. The webinar is aimed largely at two groups: experienced leaders who are curious about supporting or leading in university spin-out companies, as well as I can see some of you online who are already in the Executives into Business pool, and maybe you've got questions or would like a clearer picture of how opportunities emerge and how roles work in practice. If you're not in one of those groups, don't worry, the session's open to anybody who's got an interest in the Executives into Business programme. University spin-out companies are an exciting but sometimes complex environment. They combine world-class research, novel IP and big ambition. But we know they also need strong, experienced commercial leadership to help them form, grow and scale successfully. And that's where executive leaders can make a huge difference. Our Executives into Business programme brings that leadership into ventures from the earliest stages where it can make the greatest impact. Today isn't a sales pitch, it's an honest and practical conversation. We'll focus on what these roles really look like, how executives work with founders in universities, and we'll follow up with the practicalities of how you get involved if you leave feeling inspired enough to do so. So I'm joined by a brilliant panel today. They're the experts and they bring complementary perspectives. We've got company creation, IP and governance and real world experience of an executive stepping into a spin out via this programme. So we're not necessarily in the right order on the screen. I'll introduce people in the order that we're going to talk to them. So down on my bottom right, we've got Andrew Hodgson, who's Company Creation Manager at Newcastle Innovations at Newcastle University. We've also got Chelsea Brain, IP and Commercialisation Manager at Northumbria University. And we're delighted to have Stephen Hampson, who is CEO of Durham University Spinout H2CHP. Later on, when we get to questions and answers, we'll also be joined by Rick McCordle, Head of Company Creation at Newcastle University, and Michael Bath, Senior Tech Transfer Manager at Durham University, and they'll support with answering some of your questions and answers. So you should be able to see a Q&A panel at the top of your screen. Please do put questions and answers in the chat as we go, in the Q&A, sorry, rather than the chat function. You can pop them in as we go and we'll pick those up at the end during the question and answer sessions. So with that, I'll start by bringing in our first speaker, Andrew. So Andrew, you work at the point where research becomes a company. I just want you to talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what early stage spinouts most need from exec leaders, and how the Execs into Business programme supports with this.
Cheers very much. Hi, everyone. So my background is in startups and spinouts, so working in startups and supporting a couple of spinouts, and then I've been in this new role for about 6 months. And for me, it goes across the board, really. It's that deep commercial knowledge. Our academic teams are experts in their chosen sectors and technologies, but often they do not have the same levels when it comes to the commercialization. And I think we all know that moving from research and development and sort of research funded grants into commercial activities is difficult. It's no matter what, it's difficult. And that's why Executives into Business is so important. I think identifying people that have the experience in the sector or of taking similar technology to market equips the future spin-out with the required skill sets that, if you sort of look traditionally with other spin-outs that don't have this opportunity, or startups, you'd normally have to wait until you get your first investment raise before you can find this type of expertise. And I think this commercial mindset can ensure business plans and routes to market are not just like research based, because we're all quite good at putting together business plans and routes to market, but they're robust and they've been validated by key stakeholders and customers within the sector. I think the executives in the business opportunity, it just works really well because obviously you get some money for it, and then there's a certain amount of equity gets it, and for you as well, which really means that you're getting involved in the team, not just in a consultancy, but like a really in-depth role for potentially a long period of time. And I would like to say as well is we don't just hire and then leave you to it. We very much try and support. And so we support you with introductions to the academic team, understanding the way that the individual universities work. And we're also quite good, myself and Rick and our team, and Chelsea and across the other universities, Mike and Matt, being sounding boards to review your early drafts of business plans and sales strategies to make you feel that you're supported and we haven't just sort of hired you and left you to it. Sort of my comments.
Excellent, thank you, Andrew. We'll come back to you with some more questions later on. So Chelsea, in your role as IP and Commercialisation Manager at Northern University, you're supporting the creation of spinouts, and you've recently recruited 2 executives through the Executives into Business programme. I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about those spinouts. And maybe why it was important that an executive was brought in at that stage, and the difference that you think that'll make to the companies.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. I mean, I'll probably start a bit more generally talking about why we use it, because it's quite a flexible scheme that allows us to almost identify gaps in teams, the profile of people that might fit that gap, and activities that that person with their expertise could deliver to help us get to spin out and beyond. So mostly we've used it in, I suppose, the way that Andrew spoke about, which is you've got quite a strong technical team. You've obviously got a business skills gap, which means the team as it is can't do the basic things needed to make it an investable spin out, kind of even just get it through, the internal university process for agreeing that, it should spin out. So typically you're kind of bringing in somebody who has a startup experience, usually experience you're looking for in a kind of particular technology area, so they've already got experience with starting up in a specific technology area, and they're going to come in and they're going to do kind of more of the business activities, working in partnership with usually like one technical founder, or it could be the full technical team, or multiple people, even sometimes kind of across different universities, to do usually typical activities involve kind of working out what the proposition is, drafting a business plan that's in enough detail at enough of a level to actually get it through approval processes in the university to spin out, including putting kind of financial models together. It could be that early conversations after that point or during that point with possible investors, that might be needing to kind of put early money or the first money into that particular spin out. It could be kind of contacting first potential customers for product to kind of start up those conversations to kind of help, I suppose, bring that first investment in. It could be that person has been working with the founding team to actually speak to the TTO and support, I suppose, the company team early on with, what the terms might be, I guess, for a spin out from the university. So starting to talk about, well, what's going to fit in terms of, let's say, kind of what's licensed in terms of, what that business plan that's kind of coming together with their help involves. So it typically is those kinds of activities, and it typically is that situation that we're bringing execs in using this scheme for those opportunities kind of pre-spin out. But I mean, the beauty of it is it's quite flexible. So I think if you've got a team and there's a gap in it, and there's kind of people that you find through this scheme that can fit that, you can kind of set it up in any way to deliver what needs to be happened to move it forward to spin out. So we've had a situation in the past where we've actually had an academic that has got a good level of commercial awareness. They've come from industry, they're quite motivated. They actually want to, at some point, kind of lead the spin out. They are kind of being identified that they could be a CEO. They are CEO material in the future, but they've maybe needed someone that is experienced at this point that they can work with for a few years to kind of mentor them, and then to get them to the point that where they can kind of take on that role. So we have also used it, and that's quite rare, but we have used it in that situation also in the past. And we've got situations where you've got strong technical team and, you know, maybe no interest in kind of leading that as a CEO and as a business, and therefore we're kind of looking for someone to kind of fill that gap. So I mean, I'll talk about the two that we've just contracted. So the situation there is the typical situation, which is we've got a highly credible technical academic team, but they just can't do the things they need to on their own with who's there at the moment to kind of get that, you know, business, you know, get a sensible business plan, you know, start to, you know, create the things that the investors need to see to kind of get the first money in. So we're bringing in business people there to work with the teams in order to do those things. And the expectation with execs into business is always that you're finding someone that has an interest in, you know, they're not just doing this as a defined contract and then going. You wanting to find somebody that's going to stay with the business. They're seriously interested. They like the technology, and their plan is also to, you know, support the business to spin out through this contract. And it's fantastic to kind of have a little bit of money through this, because it's hard to attract good people, you know, without money at this point in the process of kind of creating companies. But the plan is always that you know, they're going to add value. Yes, they might be paid under a contract, but we always talk about the fact that the expectation is they will take shares, you know, at some point, and they will have a stake, and they will be working, you know, for, I guess, their own stake in the business. So we are looking to find people that want to stay with the company, because sometimes there's this gap of, you know, they might have delivered things through a contract, you know, they're being paid. It's normally done on like a milestone basis, and then there might end up being a gap between them kind of completing everything under the contract, but getting first investment. And the plan is always that, you know, the exec is kind of paid for stuff under the contract, but obviously there's shares there which then help to kind of keep them with the company, perhaps in that gap where there's not money. It's kind of pre-investment to help the company secure money, which then secures their position in the company. So that's kind of the way we use it typically, and it's the way that we're using it for these two new companies that are coming through, these spin-outs.
Thank you, Chelsea. We'll definitely be coming back to pick up on some of that. So that brings us nicely to Stephen. So Stephen Hampson is currently with Durham University spin-out H2CHP. And Stephen, you joined H2CHP as CEO through the Executives into Business programme. And I know from talking to you in the past that you've also worked with over 30 university spin-outs throughout your career. So you're well placed to talk about what that's like. I wonder if you could briefly talk us through some of the reality of the role. So we've got a lot of people on the call who are experienced leaders, and maybe wondering what it's actually like to work with spin-out companies, and also why you think experienced leaders are crucial for spin-outs.
Thanks, Jordan. Yes, when you say I've done 30 spin-outs, it sounds like I've got some problem about doing university spin-outs, and I did think some time ago that's probably enough now. So I've created them and I've invested in them, but there's a thing that I think attracts me to doing university spin-outs. Probably two things. One is that usually a spin-out is there to solve a really, really big problem that really needs to be solved. Like the company that we're involved in, H2CHP, is there to help that transition to net zero. things that you can only get excited about. But I think the other thing that always attracts me to them is you're working with some great people. The academics are superb, really fantastic people to work with. They're so motivated, so clever, and also the tech transfer office. You know, I think people have sort of talked about that support, and I can 100% speak to that support. I'll be on the phone to Michael Bath all the time, even now after 4 years or something that it's been. I think the sort of the realities of it in the early stages, at least, is probably best summed up by saying it's a lot of conversations. Yeah, having a conversation with the academics to understand the technology and better understand where the barriers are to the technology. Then you're talking to customers to make sure that there's a product market problem fit solution going on, and of course any technology can be shaped into any number of products that can go into any number of markets. So it's quite a complex problem. But the layer that I think you have to apply over the top of that is the conversations with the investors. So I would think probably conversation number 2, maybe conversation number 3 for me was conversations with investors. So it's kind of, I would have done 100 discussions with different customers to get a sense of where do people care the most about this technology and what's the biggest problem we can solve. But I would also probably have done 20 or 30 conversations with investors as well, because their lens is a little bit different. You know, they've got capital to deploy, but they want to get a return in 5 or 7 years. So if you're moving into a market that sounds exciting as a huge pain point, it has to be moving and scaling fast enough so that the investors can get it. So you're kind of solving this multi-dimensional problem, which obviously is, an interesting one to solve. I think the support from the academics is important, not just on the technical side. And I think sometimes people think, the knowledge is the technical. In my experience, certainly with HDCHV, but with all of the spinouts that I've been involved with, academics haven't kind of done this in isolation. They've seen problems that need to be solved and they've developed technology to solve it. So they're quite aware, and they've usually got a lot of engagement with customers. So I find that's quite an important step, is to make sure that you're leveraging the networks, not only your own networks, investor networks, the tech transfer offices networks, but also the academics and who the academics have worked with in the past. It's an incredibly rewarding journey in terms of, you very quickly make progress from concept to prototypes to engagement with customers, to deeper engagement with customers. And the more you do it, obviously the more exciting that it becomes, because you really do get that sense that you're solving a real problem for some customers that they're struggling to find a solution for. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it to anyone. I think Chelsea sort of described it. It's different for different companies, and I do think that is the case. It is different in different companies, and you very quickly assemble a team. We've got, 15 people that work in the company now. So very quickly, it's not just you, it's a whole team. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. And again, we'll come back to you with more questions. So if everyone can pop their questions in the Q&A section. There's no such thing as a silly question. This is, like we say, an open and honest conversation, and we're happy to answer anything. So I've got a question about the sort of length of the contracts, and some of our recent contracts that came out having very ambitious timescales, and I think that's a very valid point. So yes, you've sort of hit the nail on the head there about why there were very ambitious timescales for those particular contracts. But in terms of understanding what future opportunities will be like, and whether they're likely to follow a similar pace, or whether there might be longer lead-in times that require more meaningful market engagement, I think the short answer to that is yes. But Andrew, I wonder if you would like to pick up on sort of what we expect a typical exec appointment to look like, and the sort of timescales that would be involved, because I'm sure they're not going to be quite as ambitious as the ones referred to here.
Yes, thanks, John. I think Peter, you've hit the nail on the head there as the reasons behind it. Very much depends. If we have a look at our recent ones, we had an opportunity that was within Haas, and that was executive came on board in June in January, and we are presenting at our IP and Spinout committee tomorrow. We have another one that we're expecting that we've brought the exec in, and this is in a hydrogen opportunity. The exec came in last week, and they will be presenting at our IP and Spinout committee in July. So that's sort of the rough timescales we're going for up to that first point. And our IP and Spinout committee is where the university decides yes they can progress with Spinout, or no, there's still things to work on. After that, it then just really depends on the speed that we can move with the university, and also the speed that we can work with finding investment as well, because the later on deliverables or phases of the opportunity are really around finding that commercial traction and that investment. So I'd say, yep, the recent ones were very, very short due to various reasons. We're looking at 3 to 4 months to present to spin out, and then after that, how long's a piece of string really when it comes to raising that investment?
Excellent, thank you, Andrew. I'll just welcome Rick McCardle, Head of Company Creation at Newcastle Innovations at Newcastle University, and Michael Bath, who's a Senior Technology Transfer Manager at Durham University, who Stephen has already said he's on the phone with him a lot. So I'm hoping you can see them on the screen. They're not on my screen, but my setup's a little bit different. But Rick, I might come to you for one of the next questions, if that's okay. So we've recently simplified our execs into business process. And we've got a question about how do you get visibility of the opportunities coming through, and how do you apply for the roles? Would you mind picking up on that a little bit about who will be given visibility of which roles? Right.
Yes, very happy to talk about that. I think that it's fair to say that the system that we have had in place for execs into business has been a little outdated, not very user-friendly, and the process of applying for an exec into business, or even just joining the framework, has been awful. So it's taken us a while, but we've got a much simpler process now. There is a very simple application process for us at Northern Accelerator, where we'll just be asking a little bit about your background and expertise. And then there's a very simple case of registering onto a system which will enable you to respond to the tender when they are promoted. What we're going to do is, when we have an opportunity, we will profile our database list of potential execs, and in most cases we will try and arrange a meeting between individuals and the academics prior to the tender being published or circulated. But we don't intend for every tender opportunity to go out to every single member on our framework. We want it to be much more targeted, so that you don't get information into your inbox which is not relevant. So if it was a biosciences, biotech spin out, then if you've indicated to us that that's your area of interest, an area of expertise, you will see the tender. So hopefully a much simpler process, and then you'll just be asked to respond to that through the portal, and we will then provide the feedback and assessment in the normal way.
Thank you, Rick. And we will follow up after this webinar for all attendees with a link to that simple registration form. And it really is just 5 minutes to fill that in. Let us know which sectors you're interested in, and then when there are opportunities in those sectors, that's when you'll hear from us. We've got a question from Deepak about how many people we're looking for. And I think really this is, there's no definitive answer to this, because we want a pool of as many experienced people as possible. Mike, would you like to say something just about maybe the variety of types of spin-outs that we have, and why it's important we have a pool of as many people as possible?
Yeah, it's important to get a big pool because a lot of the people in the pool are busy things. So there might be 200 people in the pool, but out of those 200, there might only be 20 who are available at any one time. So it's important to have as many as possible. And the variety, we don't always get a direct hit with somebody with experience in a particular industry or a particular technology, but the general skills of being able to talk to academics nicely and gain the trust of the academics and hold their hands for a year or 6 months to a year is what it normally takes. Those kind of general soft skills probably more important than precise technology or market skills. But if you've got both, that's even better.
Brilliant, thank you. So Stephen, I've just had a question in on a message directly to me, and it's around the ongoing support for spinout. So you'll know we have our spinout leaders network, and you mentioned briefly before about the ongoing relationship with the tech transfer managers. I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit more on that, about what it's like to be part of that community of spinout businesses.
Yeah, there's a really good network of spinout leaders that meet frequently, and obviously the value you get from that is that there's a lot of people either have recently solved the problem that you've got or are going through it. So there's great support, but also access to networks and introductions and stuff. So that's a hugely valuable part of the process. But that engagement with the tech transfer officer, I think, is also incredibly important because they are very well networked across different industries, different investors. So Mike will join our board meetings. I'll call Mike to go, can you make an introduction to these people? That conversation just keeps on going all the time. So you never feel that you don't have that ongoing support. It's always there.
Brilliant. And Chelsea, I wonder if you could pick up a little bit. We talked about the academic founders having various levels of experience with business skills. But of course we do, as Northern Accelerator, we do have other support where we don't sort of just leave the academic founders floundering. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about what we do to help the academic founders be able to work better with their executive business program, perhaps through future founders and other types of support.
Yeah, sure. Firstly, though, I'll just agree with what Stephen said, which is when we bring execs into business, we have this three-way relationship. You've got the academic team, you've got the exec, and you've got the TTO, and we're all working closely together and kind of communicating. I might communicate directly with the exec when he's communicating or she's communicating directly to the founding team. So that is the way it works. We don't just bring you in and then that's it. You're kind of off on your own. We're all kind of working together on kind of developing the opportunity and trying to create this new company. But yeah, I guess in the situation where, and it's most of the time where you've got like an academic team that they don't have the right skills to like be CEO of a company and kind of lead it, in terms of business experience, and maybe sometimes they just don't want that. They do want to continue with an academic career, but they're willing to put the time that's needed into the company with a good business team to kind of to lead it, and that's fine. But in those situations, Future Founders is a good example. So Northern Accelerator offers a course that we would put academics on that have an interest in, they might have a technology and they have an interest in actually spinning that out as a company. We put them on like a business training course. It's a crash course in kind of everything that's involved in basically starting up a company, how to write a business plan, intellectual property, how the process of which universities spin out companies. And it's not to to get them to become, you know, business experts and necessarily CEOs. It's just so that they understand that process and everything that's needed, and actually everything that an exec, when they would come in through this scheme, would be looking at doing, so that they can, you know, work with the exec kind of support to deliver all the things that we generally need to see in these bits of work with contracts, to kind of spin a company out, and then also usually secure kind of first money, first investment. But also, I guess, just us as TTOs, you know, just kind of working closely with founder and exec and team, and just kind of managing expectations too, in terms of you know, in terms of that and the relationship. So yeah, we're kind of, I guess they're prepared. You know, we agree together kind of with the academic founder and the technical team that, you know, to do an execs into business. So the expectations are normally set with them as to kind of what it involves.
Excellent, thanks, Chelsea.
Andrew,
I'll come to you on a question about whether this is a closed tender process, and how much detail is required for a tender process. I just wonder if you can talk, because I know you've recently been reviewing the sort of draft tender documents that we'll be using going forward. So would you be able to just talk about that for?
Yeah, absolutely. I would just like to add on to the types of support available. We also have investment support. So we have an access to finance specialist, and alongside that, we have our own £22.5 million fund, which is managed by North Star. And that is going to be investing into 5 250k and 3 1 million per year for the next 5 years. So it means that we are hoping to bridge that gap with the early stage investment requirements. To go to what Deepak's asked, Northern Accelerator is looking for 4 executives into business over this next year. After that, I think it's then going up to 6 per year. Am I correct there? And there may be additional coming from the individual universities also. And for the process, yes, in the past, it was the tender process, the typical public procurement. We're more flexible now, but the key questions really are previous business executive leadership, business development experience, understanding of IP, technology licensing, operational, organizational, financial planning, experience of raising sector-specific capital, I'd probably say, experience of international markets, and experience of working collaboratively between academic teams and then the wider commercial. We have a few pass-fail questions within the application process, and then a few more which are then going to your details around providing experience of how you've implemented business plans and growth plans, experience how you've built strategic alliances, and a few of those, up to around about 6 of those questions. But we can provide you a bit of an overview of a traditional application, so you can have an idea of the type of the type of questions that we will ask. That sort of covers it. Yeah, whilst I'm here, I'll also say we'll put the application out, it gets scored, and then either if it's very close, we may invite you into interview if it's close and we can't separate. In the past, we've asked if people can work together because they've brought specific skills to the opportunity. After that, we then tend to get going, and myself and the teams like Chelsea will be helping with the paperwork and logistics behind, and you'll be working with the academic teams. The first port of call for Newcastle is to develop the business plans and present at the IP and spinout committee. And as I said there, we're looking at 3, 4, 5 months, depending on the opportunity. After that, we then work with you to look for that investment. Chelsea, have you got anything you'd add on?
Yeah, just to say, it's so flexible. Like realistically for us, it's kind of money from an external funding source, for which if we can identify what we need doing and who can do that, then we can almost kind of contract, I guess, anything, can't we? So we've also in the past had, we've had 2 people that we've actually contracted to do the things. So we've brought 2 people into a spin-out team to kind of deliver this stuff, and they've stayed with the company, like a kind of a stayed with the company kind of post spin out. I mean, the other thing too, Andrew, is we also, I guess we can also kind of, you can contract companies, can't you, as opposed to I mean, obviously if you've got your own kind of consultancy vehicle, fine, but we've also got kind of companies where they might have like maybe 2 or 3 people where they all kind of do different things. Like one might be kind of more of a legal expert and one's kind of more of a business expert, and we've kind of contracted those in to kind of deliver stuff that the kind of company needs. Yeah, but it's so flexible, this scheme, that almost if we identify a gap and we've got somebody that fills it, then we just agree on the activities and it's all go.
Rick, do you have anything to add on this bit?
No, I think that's covered it. I mean, it's not an easy thing to get right, but when it is right, it really works, and we've seen that. So we're keen to try and work very hard with yourselves and the academic team to really make that match work. And in fact, as we've seen, when it doesn't go right, it has a big impact on the future of the company. So it's really important to get that bit right from the start. Yeah. And we'll do, as a team, we'll do whatever we can to make that work.
Yeah. I mean, the great thing about this scheme too is it's almost like an extended interview process, isn't it? Because you with each other, because you've got the dynamics of the team kind of have to work, and it kind of gives you the time to kind of work that out. So it's just a good thing, and team's critical, I guess. For spin outs, it's the hardest thing that us as a tech transfer office can kind of support putting together. The team. And that's why I think we love this scheme, because it helps us to do that. It helps us to create strong teams. Yeah.
I'm not quite sure where Jordan's
Where's
gone.
Jordan gone? Do we have any more questions that we've not answered?
Can I just jump in if I may? Mike and Jordan have both had to drop out of the webinar because there's a fire alarm within the university building. So they've had to vacate the building. So apologies from both of them, but they've had to leave the building.
Okay. Well, that happened last time I was at Durham University too.
We've had a question which universities are involved, and so Northern Accelerator covers Newcastle, Northumbria, Durham, Sunderland and Teesside.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew, you mentioned our spin-out fund earlier. So just keen to talk a little bit more about that. This £22.5 million fund has been designed specifically to help our early stage spin-out companies. We want to do 5 investments every year into those companies at around 250,000, with more money available for scaling up at around £1 million. We want to do 3 of those every year. So 8 investments every year from that fund over the next 5 years. And the purpose of the fund is obviously not just to get these businesses out there, but also to create a longer term fund where we will continue to support new spin-outs and also existing portfolio spin-outs for many years to come. It's a competitive process, as you would expect. So the spin-outs will be presenting to an investor committee, which is run by North Star, who are our fund managers. And we would, of course, be very happy to make introductions if you are involved as an exec into business directly to North Star, so you can start to discuss the opportunity with the spin-out that you get involved in. But it's a great thing, and we think it's going to be transformational over the next few years.
And I would just like to add, I think Chelsea mentioned it before, that the executives into business is a competitive process as far as the academic teams. They have to apply and they have to jump through a few hurdles. It's not just a case of every academic team that wishes to spin out will have the opportunity for an executive into business. So you should know that by the time that something goes out to you guys, that it has been validated, and we do, as a collective and as a university, believe that there is a real opportunity there. And yeah, we make sure that that's been checked over a few times before it gets to that stage. Are there any other questions?
If not, I guess we can depart 5 minutes early.
There's just one, which is when will the fund start? So the fund, if we're talking about the investment fund, that has started now. They've made some investments already. If we're talking about the executives into business, we are looking at taking applications from the academic teams in the next month or so, and we will probably be getting going with pushing opportunities out around about June time. After this 1 year of bridge funding, it will go into more of a rolling, because we'll be looking at 6. So there'll be, throughout the year, there will be opportunities for people to get involved, rather than in this year, it's going to be 4 opportunities only. After that, it will go into more of a rolling opportunity.
Andrew, there's one more question here at the top, which is, what next? If anyone on here wants to think about, joining this pool and seeing those opportunities, what would be the next steps?
Join the pool. What I will do is I'll read out Jordan's closing. So thank you to all of our panelists and everyone who attended and asked questions. If you're interested in playing a meaningful role in shaping ambition to spin out, we would encourage you to take the next step, which is go onto the Northern Accelerator Executives into Business, and there should be links there. Joining the pool doesn't commit you to a specific role or timescale. It simply opens the door to conversations about opportunities that align with your experience, interests, and availability. The procurement process for each opportunity as it arises then focus on matching the correct executives with the spinouts. If you're already on the pool, this is also a prompt to reconnect with us. Let us know your current situations. You should have received an email with the link to a short form to provide this information. We'll also include this in the follow-up email after this webinar. Basically, sit tight and we will follow up with you after the webinar. Yep, that looks like everything.
Fantastic. Okay, a few minutes back.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Everyone.
Bye.